You've put in a request to take off next Tuesday. Your Tuesday, one of a finite number you get, and you needed someone else's signature to have it. You've done this so many times you stop noticing. It's strange. And you will do it for another 10, 20, 30, 40 years. During the exact years, your body and mind are at their absolute peak, and it will keep feeling normal the whole time. That's not a scheduling detail. That's the sanest years of your life spent asking for permission to live them. Today, we're going to find out why that doesn't feel insane, even though it should. Unnatural. Here's what you were never told. The 9 to 5 is not how humans have always worked. It's not natural. It's not even old. For most of human history, work was task-bound, not clock-bound. You worked until the harvest was in, until the tide turned, until the light failed. In 1967, historian E.P. Thompson published a study that traced exactly when that changed and why. Industrial capital needed synchronized bodies. Factories only work if everyone shows up at the same hour and leaves at the same hour. So time stopped being something you lived inside and became something you owed. The 9 to 5 you treat as bedrock is roughly 200 years old compared to how long humans have existed. That's not tradition. That's a policy dressed up as fate. And it kept moving after that. In 1926, Henry Ford cut his factories down to a 5-day, 40-hour week, but not out of generosity, but because a rested worker on a machine was a more productive worker on a machine. The number you build your entire adult life around isn't the law of nature. It was set by an assembly line owner, calculating what got the most output out of a body before it broke down. You inherited somebody else's efficiency calculation and started calling it just how life works. Permission. Let's look at it objectively. Adults. Grown, capable adults submit a request to another adult for the right to their own time. You ask someone else who does not own your body, your mind, or your remaining years whether you're allowed to have a day of them. And if they say no, you don't get that day. That's the time off request. That's approved by manager. That's the sick day you justify with symptoms, like your body owes an explanation before it is believed. Picture the actual moment. You need to leave for a doctor's appointment. Not a vacation, not a favor. Your own body needing attention. And your first move isn't to go. It's to draft a message, carefully wording the right amount of apology, waiting for the little check mark that says someone else has reviewed your request to take care of yourself and found it acceptable. You do this so often that the waiting doesn't even register as waiting anymore. None of your ancestors, before the factories, needed a signature to leave the field for an hour. They answered to weather, to hunger, to the sun going down, not to a person one rank above them, with the power to say no. And here's the part that should actually disturb you. This isn't a metaphor for wasting your life. It is the mechanism by which your life gets spent. Every year you work the structure is a year where a huge share of your most capable hours, the ones your body will never hand you again, get allocated by somebody else's approval. You are not managing your time. You are requesting access to it. 40 plus years of that, during the only years you'll ever have this much capacity, spent waiting to be granted access to your own life. This is insane. So here's the actual question. Not, is this broken? You already know it's broken the second you think about it. The question is, why doesn't it feel broken most days? Why you'd probably defend it if a stranger criticized your job right now. In 1994, psychologist John Jost and Mazarin Banaji named this the system justification theory. The finding is kind of uncomfortable. People are motivated to defend the exact systems they depend on, and that motivation gets stronger, not weaker, the more trapped they are inside of them. Not despite the trap, because of it. Admitting the arrangement is broken means admitting you spent years, maybe decades, inside of something that should never have needed defending in the first place. That's a much harder thing to process than the cage itself. So the mind does the cheaper thing. It calls the cage reasonable. It calls the cage just how work is. It calls you lucky to have a job. Watch for it, out of your own mouth. Someone questions your hours and you hear yourself say, "It's not that bad. before you've even checked whether that's actually true. You called unpaid overtime hustle. You call having no time off just how this industry is. Every one of those is the same move. Not a lie exactly, but a reflex, firing to protect you from the cognitive dissonance you'd otherwise have to face. Jost's later research breaks the motive into three needs that defense is trying to satisfy. The need for certainty. Predictable structure beats an uncertain one, even if it's a bad structure. The need to feel safe from threat. Questioning the system you depend on for rent and food feels dangerous, so your mind avoids it. And the need to belong. Everyone around you is inside this very same arrangement, so defending it is defending them and yourself from the isolation of being the one who calls it broken out loud. Nobody had to choose this for you. It only had to be true once that defending the cage was easier than questioning it, and after that the mechanism ran on its own. Someone else's will. Now here's where it gets personal. In the early 1960s, Stanley Milgram ran the experiment everybody remembers, but for the wrong reason. The headline was "People Obey." The actual finding was stranger. Under a legitimate seeming authority, a person shifts states from what Milgram called the autonomous state, where you are the origin of your own actions, into the agentic state, where you become an instrument carrying out someone else's will. And the moment that shift happens, responsibility doesn't feel like yours anymore. It feels like it belongs to whoever gave this instruction. You didn't learn that state as an adult. You were trained into it as a child. Sociologist Irving Goffman described institutions that control the small permissions of daily life, when you eat, when you speak, when you're allowed to leave the room, as total institutions. Prisons, asylums, and schools. You raise your hand, wait to be called on before you speak, before you stand, before you leave to use the bathroom. That's not classroom management. That's the agentic state installed early on a mind too young to question it. So the time off request is new behavior. It's you, still raising your hand, decades later, wearing a tie instead of a backpack. Domesticated. 10,000 mornings. Let's do the math, honestly. 40 years, 5 days a week. That's over 10,000 mornings, where the first transaction of the day is asking whether you're allowed to have it. Can I spend my time, or do I have to go to work? The years. Your body will never be this capable again, and your mind will never be this sharp again. Spent inside a structure built 2 centuries ago for someone else's factory, defended by a mechanism that runs on your own fear of admitting it's broken, enforced by a reflex you were trained into before you were old enough to question who was giving the instructions. That's not a career. That's a very, very long wait for permission that was never anyone else's to grant. 2 questions. 1. Name a time you asked permission for something that was never actually anyone else's to give. 2. Where, this week, did you defend the exact system that's costing you the most? Don't just answer them quickly. Sit with them until the honest answer shows up, instead of the comfortable one. You don't need a new job to fix this. You need to stop mistaking the cage for the ground you're standing on. Stop asking for permission. Your life, your time. Free will is an act of rebellion.